Hi, Scope readers. My name is Kristen Lewis, and I'm so excited to take you behind the scenes of my article, Disaster in the Sky. On January 28, 1986, a space shuttle called the Challenger and its 7 crew members blasted off from Cape Canaveral, Florida. As the whole nation watched, tragedy struck. 73 seconds after liftoff, there was an explosion. The spacecraft broke apart high up in the sky. The entire crew was lost. It was an unthinkable tragedy for the nation, for NASA, for the families of the crew.
At 11:40 a.m. this morning, the space program experienced a national tragedy with the explosion of the Space Shuttle Challenger approximately a minute and a half after launch from here at the Kennedy Space Center.
Over the years, I've received many requests from Scope readers to do an article on the Challenger. I knew it was an important story to tell, but also a tough one. I was just a small child when the Challenger was lost. I have vague recollections of my parents being deeply sad. But for many who were older than I was, the memory is seared in their minds. They can tell you exactly where they were and what they were doing when they heard the news. Nothing like it had ever happened in the history of America's space program. Like many people, I have always been fascinated by space. As a kid, my parents would take me and my brother up to the mountains near where we lived. Late at night, we would climb out on a giant cliff thousands of feet high. We'd lay out under the starlight for hours, staring up. And gazing at that sky filled me with wonder. What is out there? Beyond our blazing sun, beyond the dusty red planet Mars, the asteroid belt hurtling through our solar system. What mysteries are out there just waiting to be unriddled? Of course, these questions are not new. Humans have always asked them. Before I began digging into the Challenger, I spent a lot of time learning about the history of space exploration. I knew I needed to understand the Challenger in its larger historical context. And as I researched, I was struck by the fact that it's only very recently in history that we developed the science and technology to look deeply into our universe. In fact, NASA, America's space agency, was formed in 1958, just 64 years ago. Yet in that short time, humans have walked on the moon, sent rovers to Mars, and built the International Space Station. One of NASA's most important achievements in the 20th century was the Space Shuttle program. For decades, shuttles were how astronauts got to space. The Space Shuttle was an incredible feat of engineering. They rocketed off the surface, orbited the Earth, and returned to the ground so they could be used again. The Space Shuttle program led to many advances in understanding our planet and how humans can live in orbit for long periods of time. I knew I wanted to include some of these details in my article. As you read, see if you can find them. Now that I understood the history of human spaceflight and the space shuttle program, I was ready to begin researching the Challenger itself. I watched a documentary and read articles and these books. I interviewed experts and combed through old newspapers and reports. I visited a park near where I live in Brooklyn, nicknamed Astronaut Park. The park has a powerful monument to one of the Challenger astronauts, Dr. Ronald E. McNair. During my research, I kept a journal of notes and key terms. There were many big questions that I wanted to explore in my article. Why had the Challenger exploded? Could the disaster have been prevented? What can we learn from the story of the Challenger disaster? And perhaps most of all, how do you move forward after a tragedy of such magnitude? These were the same questions that people were asking back in 1986. The president at the time, Ronald Reagan, appointed a special commission to find the answers. The investigation found that along the way, some bad decisions had been made, and NASA would need to make some changes to their organization.
Although the lessons of failure are hard, they are often the most important on the road to progress. We've learned in these past few months that we are frail and fallible, but we have also learned that we have the courage to face our faults and the strength to correct our errors. Because we don't hide our mistakes, we're not condemned to repeat them. Because we're an open society, we have room to grow.
President Reagan's words stuck with me as I wrote my article. Even though my story is now finished, I think about the Challenger often, especially the crew. They believed in NASA's mission of space exploration. They quite literally reached for the stars. I want you to know their names, because it is by learning about them and remembering them that we honor them. Gregory Jarvis, Christa McAuliffe, Ronald McNair, Ellison Onizuka, Judith Resnick, Francis Dick Scobie, Michael Smith.